I was given a task to design something for a client, and I was given 5 days to do so. I came up with all these ideas as the days went by and I got closer and closer to the due date. I was more and more dissatisfied with my work. I wanted it to be perfect. I had these high expectations for myself and how I design and the quality of the work that I need to produce. And it got to a point where it was the night before the design was due, and I didn't even want to submit it because I didn't think I had enough time. I didn't think the work that I produced was good enough. Looking back, objectively, the work that I produced was of high quality and high standard. But I couldn't see that at the time because I was so caught up in being perfect. I was so caught up in these expectations that I had of myself. As someone who can experience this in all parts of their life, I think it's important to acknowledge that this is something that happens and also talk about how you can overcome it. So the promise of this video is I will provide insight into overcoming dissatisfaction with the meaningful progress you make in work and in your day-to-day life. A little bit about who I am. I work in the film industry as a VFX editor. I've done work for short films, created my own short films, and I run an Indian-based streetwear brand in Melbourne. So again, my name is RK. I have the mission of helping creatives improve themselves and the people around them through their craft, through educational videos like these, and showcasing my own work to inspire. First of all, I'd like to say respect to you for clicking on this low dopamine educational video instead of the clickbaity ones on your YouTube feed. Something that would really help me and help you in the long run is if you scroll down and click the subscribe button, so you would see more videos like this produced by me or other YouTubers that are educational on your feed. So the 3 factors into understanding why we discount our own self-success are to understand reference points and imposter syndrome, to understand perfectionism, and understanding the concept of progressive overload. So first we're going to go into reference points and the imposter syndrome. Most of the information in this section is taken from the Science of Wellbeing. This is a Coursera course run by Yale University, and it is taken by this wonderful professor named Laurie Santos. It goes into a lot of interesting concepts. If you like the kind of things that I'm talking about in this section of the video, it'll be something really worth looking into. You might have heard of the term imposter syndrome before. It's an internal experience of self-doubt and believing that you are not as competent as others perceive you to be. Imposter syndrome is more explaining what it feels like to not feel worthy of the accomplishments and the accolades you work towards. But there is a lot of other mindsets that you might have that are similar to imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome doesn't cover not feeling satisfied in the work that you've put in your life, emotionally, and in the relationships that you have. We will be going through how to tackle imposter syndrome and all its similar experiences. So the first thing we need to talk about when we want to tackle satisfaction and our own self-perception is the reference points that we have. Our self-perception is based on these transient, extrinsic reference points. What we see in the media, what we see on TV, what we read, what we hear. Anything that is information that's coming into our brains that we are perceiving, impressions on ourselves. And we use these as anchor points for self-comparison. A major example of this would be beauty campaigns and how they have unrealistic standards for female beauty. These reference points that women consume, there has been multiple researchers showing that these unrealistic beauty standards cause a lot of mental health issues and the unrealistic expectations of oneself. The problem is you can't really stop your brain from processing these reference points and creating these self-comparisons. It's something we can't really control. Anything that comes in is going to get processed, subconsciously or consciously. But these things can really affect how we feel and how satisfied we are in our own self-perception. On top of that, we need to understand that there is no such thing as a positive reference point. There is no such thing as positive comparison. Laurie Santos explains that when we look up at people who are perceived to be better than us, we feel this sense of dissatisfaction in our own lives. We tend to discount the things that we have and should be very grateful for in our own lives or the experiences that we have. On the other hand, looking down at people who might not have what we have doesn't make us feel any better either. Scientifically speaking, there is no increase in happiness or satisfaction looking down, but there is a decrease in happiness and satisfaction looking up. So there is no reference point that has a positive effect on us, and we can't stop our brain from making these reference points for self-perception. So how can we combat this annoying feature of our brain? Now I'm going to go into resetting our reference points. How do we reset our reference points? The first and the most important thing we can do is stopping and limiting the inflow of these reference points. This is probably the hardest step out of all of them. What we consume, social media, TV, what we hear from others, is this constant flow of reference points coming in, especially social media and doom scrolling that we do nowadays. Injects these reference points every 2 seconds into our brain every time we scroll. Some more tactics that we can do to help with resetting of reference points is this thing called concrete re-experiencing and concrete observing. Concretely re-experiencing is going back to the time that we didn't have something in our lives and visualizing what our lives were. Say I'm someone who is observing and comparing myself to someone with more experience than me in a certain field that I have been working in for a long time. I can go back in time and think about the times that I did not have these skills that I have in this field. What was my life like then? This concrete re-experiencing of what we didn't have before allows us to thwart this hedonic adaptation that we get used to the things that we have. We take the skills and the accolades that we achieved over the years, and we take them for granted because anything good, anything bad, we just get used to it. The third thing we can do, concretely observing, is we have all these fantasies in our head of these people that we look up to and we compare ourselves to. And concrete observing can really help ground all those beliefs that we have that could be quite narrow. So say I'm comparing myself to someone who has a job in a certain company that I would like to work for, and comparing myself to this person makes me feel quite inadequate in the place that I am right now. Concretely observing the role that this person works, researching and looking through and understanding the role that they have can really help concrete all the ups and downs and the intricacies that come with this person's role, as it's not the role and the person who we are comparing ourselves to. It's the idea that we have of them in our brain. This is a technique that you can use on your day-to-day basis when you catch yourself comparing yourself using these reference points that are coming in. Saying stop out loud is a method you can use to train your brain to have automatic thoughts to catch yourself when you are using reference points for self-comparison. Another thing that I will be going into in future videos is gratitude journaling. We hedonically adapt to the things in our life. Good or bad, we get used to them. And taking a second every day or so to write the things that we are grateful for really help in resetting our reference point of the things that we have in our own lives. So now we've talked about reference points and the imposter syndrome. Now we're going to be talking about how perfectionism can discount our own self-success. If you're someone who is very critical and you would describe yourself as someone who is very results-based and you really care about and attribute most of your personality and your worth to the things that you've accomplished or done in your life. If you're someone who procrastinates a lot, although you might not know it, you have traits of perfectionism. And although at times perfectionism has led way to great discoveries and great breakthroughs, on our day-to-day lives, perfectionism in other aspects other than just work, and even in work at times, can really thwart our satisfaction in the progress that we're making. A quote that I really like is, perfectionism is stagnation. Straight line thinking. It's thinking that everything that you pick up and do is a linear graph. Your progress is linear. You start at one point and you end up in the finish line and you don't have any hiccups. This causes a lot of anxiety at times and worry that the work that we are producing is inadequate. And it takes away a lot of the satisfaction and the joy of overcoming adversities and forming a meaningful process when working. If you are a perfectionist or you do have some of the characteristics that I explained before, at times perfectionism causes certain self-disappointment because we set such high expectations of the work and the way we need to produce stuff that the expectations are so high that we will never be able to meet them. This delays productive progress and also is a way that people use to justify procrastination and wasting time. So how can we overcome perfectionism? I would like you to think about imagining a world that everyone is perfect. Everything that everyone picks up and decides to do, every skill, every game, everyone is just perfect at it immediately. They have this linear progress where they start something, they have no hiccups, they make no mistakes. What would this world look like? There would be no humor, there would be no humanity, it would be robotic. Imperfection is where most of our humanity comes from, where accidents come from, where innovation can come from. Understanding this can really help change our mindset when it comes to perfectionism. Another way we can tackle overcoming perfectionism is adding context to the things that we're doing. An example that I like to use is, if I asked you what the point of playing a game would be, you most likely would say the overall objective is to win. But then if I added context to that and say you're with your family for a family gathering and you're playing a game with your parents and your little cousins and your little brother, the context of that game might be a way to connect with your family and the people around you, a family tradition, a way to allow the older people in your family to have some fun, and an opportunity for you to show some compassion to your younger cousins or your younger siblings by letting them win. Applying a lot of context awareness to the things that we're doing on a day-to-day basis can allow us to see that there is a lot of humanity in being imperfect. Another example would be, say you're writing a letter to someone that you really care about. Writing something meaningful and thoughtful would be more appreciated by the person than a perfect, clinical, clean letter. That's why most of the time a handwritten letter is so thoughtful over a typed letter, as it shows the imperfections in your handwriting and your own personal flair that you've added to the letter. This concept of adding context, awareness to everything that you do can help you overcome this trap of perfectionism. So now we've understood what reference points are and how to overcome them, how to overcome perfectionism. Finally, we can talk about progressive overload. So understanding progressive overload. So this is Milo. He was known to be the strongest man in all of Greece at the time he was alive. You can see here that he did not just become this strong and go directly to lifting the biggest bull. He started off with the small wins by carrying the sheep first, then the bigger bull, and then the biggest bull. This analogy of Milo of Cretan shows and encapsulates what progressive overload is. It's slowly increasing where you believe is a level that is challenging for you at the stage you are in right now, so that over time you can get better and better at the things that you do. Success is not a straight line. It looks like this. It's exponential. And when you're at the start, you need to start by taking the small wins first so they can compile and grow. How this links into what we're talking about is that you need to understand the level which you're in right now. If lifting the sheep is what your maximum level is, that is what you need to do. There is no judgment or embarrassment in not being able to lift the big bull, because everyone has to start somewhere. Understanding that the work you're producing now as an artist may not be as great as the masters, but also the masters had to start somewhere. It takes time. You need to take the little wins, the little sheep, before you can lift the big bull. So we have talked about all three key factors in understanding why we discount our own self-success and how to get over these factors. The promise of this video that I made at the start is I will provide insight into overcoming dissatisfaction with the meaningful progress you make in work and your life on a day-to-day basis. And that was met using all of these steps. Thank you very much.